Ronan, I heard somebody had the audacity to cold call the cold call king. And I heard it didn't go over all that well.
Oh man, I gotta be fair though. Yeah, I got a cold call, and I usually won't pick up cold calls because I can tell right away. It's not because I don't want to. It's usually because I'm in the middle of something, like most people. Thing is, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and so I have a Cleveland area code, but I don't live in Cleveland anymore. I haven't lived there in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So anytime I get a phone call and it's with a 216 area code, I know right away this is someone cold calling me, spoofing the area code. I don't answer that, but this was not a 216 area code, it was a 415. And so I thought, oh, that's weird. Let me just pick up. I also happen to be, just to full disclosure, I happen to be biking to work. And
Okay.
as I was biking, I also bumped into a friend on the street who was going for a jog. So I wasn't very present. All this to say, like, neither's your prospect, right? Like, when you're cold calling prospects, just realize stuff's happening in their world. And this is why I am so big on get their attention immediately within the first
Yeah.
few seconds of the call and then go into the transition. But so what happened on this call, the guy immediately, I pick up the phone. He actually had an accent as well, which kind of was throwing me off.
Okay.
And he starts going into about a 30-second pitch, like, "Hi, Ronan, I'm calling you from this company." I don't really even remember what he said at first. And I'm calling about, and he starts sharing things that made no sense to me. He was
Yeah.
using jargon. He was talking about this contractor gig that I have right now where I'm building an SDR team for a company as if I worked at the company and was responsible for their budget. And as we go in, I'm just like, all right, I answered. Let me give him the time of day. So
Yeah.
I asked him to clarify. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't really follow what you're saying. Can you just be really specific? What problem do you solve, and what are you calling about? So if you go into the script, there's two things you have to do before you can actually have the conversation you want to have as a cold caller. And we talk about this on this channel a bunch.
Hmm.
The first thing you got to do is you got to make sure you have their attention and you keep their attention. That's in the first half second to 3 seconds of the call. That's why I'm really big on just focus on how you sound in your call opener. Check out, by the way, our call opener video that we did a while back. That one has some good examples. But once you're in and you get permission, I'm a fan of the permission based opener. You don't
Hmm.
have to use a permission based opener. I don't care. Your prospect likely will feel a little bit better if you give them the option.
What's an
But
example of what you're using now, Ronan, for a PBO?
right now I'm going with, I just go right in strong, like, "Hey, Matt." And,
Hello?
yeah, Matt, it's Renan Passar here with RP Advisory. Look, you don't know me. I don't know you. This is this is a cold call. And I've been getting hung up on all day. If you want to hang up on me again, that's totally fine. I won't be offended by it. But can I at least have half a minute to tell you why I called you today?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So just go in, and I always adopt the warm and friendly tone because that one's easier for me. But I know a lot of people who like going with the like confident tone. Jeremy Miner's a big fan of the uncertainty tone, like don't be
Yep.
certain. I actually like that, but only for asking questions. I don't like that when you're opening a call. I
Okay.
love the uncertainty
Friendly.
tone when you're asking a question because it pulls the prospect in more. That's the one thing he actually does really well is if you watch any of his videos, get to the part where he talks about like how to
The
sound when
tone.
uncertain,
Yep.
because that's
Those are the
100%.
biggest things I picked up with him, man. Is the tone, the delivery, the pacing, the pausing, all that stuff. It goes a long way because it's
Oh,
more important how you sound than the words you use.
exactly. And so here's the thing. I'm on the call with this guy for 4 minutes before I finally understood what he was talking about. 4 minutes. And only
Four
because
minutes.
I wanted to give him the shot. It was actually kind of funny because I was about to give him feedback and he called me out. He was like, "Are you about to be one of those guys who gives me like the cold caller feedback?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was
Well,
gonna
yeah, I'm the
because
cold call
I won't
king.
do
Come on,
that."
man.
So I didn't, and that's why we're doing this video instead because I needed this feedback to go somewhere, and I didn't want to be that like jerk who's gonna be like, "I'm gonna tell you how to do this better." It's like whatever. Like, this guy's been at it for a while. I did ask him how long he had been doing it for, and he was like 6 years. And so I don't know if
Okay.
he's just reading off a script, but it did not seem like he had been doing it for that long.
So he didn't have his tone down. His tonality and pacing was not all that good. He didn't do research because he thought you were working at a company, but you were a contractor for the company. And it took 4 minutes for you to understand why he was calling you.
And let's just focus on that last part because that's exactly right, Matt. It took him so long, and this is what I see so many cold callers struggle with. You have all these things that you know about your company, and you want to
Yeah.
somehow get that over to your prospect, which makes sense, right? Like, I want them to know all the, or let's say you work in tech and your product solves 15 challenges and you want to let your prospect know about all of them. Also, great, sure. But one at a time. You can't just dump
Yeah.
all this stuff on your prospects. There's this idea in cold calling that if I list 2 or 3 or 4 things and I just say, do any of those resonate with you? That the prospect will, like a robot, pick from a library and just be like, yeah, that was the thing that sounded interesting. I'm of the belief that in our world today, you don't have anyone's attention for more than 3 to 5 seconds at a time, maybe 7 seconds if you're lucky. And so the goal of the cold call is to have it set up in a way where every 7 seconds you are re-engaging their attention.
Got
That's
it.
why I've developed the script the way that I've developed it, and that's why it works. Is because
Well,
what we're trying to go
Ronan,
for.
I would say this is much different than most of the coaching on cold calling. Most of the
Totally.
script and frameworks that are shared on LinkedIn don't talk about this at all. They'll go through, here are 3 potential challenges. Do any of those resonate, or am I totally off base here? Something like that. I've seen so much of that from cold call coaches. I've yet to hear anything like this. I know we've talked about this in the
Yeah,
past, but re-engaging the prospect every 7 seconds because their attention span's not all that high. You just interrupted their day.
totally. And you know what? I mean, you just nailed it. The problem is, and I'll share this with everyone on the call here. The reason why I've developed the script to look like this, there's really just 5 parts, but there's a 6th part at the end there, is because each one of these dots, each one of these parts is designed specifically to keep your prospect engaged up until you're at the provocative question. And between the
Mm.
provocative question and your close is where your conversation will happen. So there's 4 steps that lead up to now I can have a conversation. I don't have to worry as much about keeping their engagement. 4 steps. Opener, do I have your attention? Transition, what's this about? The probe, do you have this problem or not? And provoke, have you ever considered the solution that I'm about to share to solve that problem with you? Is that interesting? Does that create enough curiosity for you to want to learn more? Then you get objection, 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 conversation, move to close.
Got it.
This is literally like walking down a path where you literally have just like one lane to get to your destination. That's it. The only time where you can veer off is when you get to that probe and provoke and you ask the question and they go, yeah, I'm all set. I've got something for this. It's your competitor. We just re-signed with them for 2 more years. Game over. Now I can shift to something else using a problem stack.
A different problem.
Bingo.
Okay, so what you're saying is after you gain permission from the prospect, you're then sharing a problem quickly and then seeing if that resonates, and if it doesn't, you're moving to a different problem. Am I following that correctly? That
Exactly.
workflow?
Yeah. So
Okay.
once I have my prospect's attention, now I'm in the clear to actually, for the first time, talk about anything that has to do with why I'm calling. And this is where people get it wrong. So let's say you get your opener right, you get the transition down. By the way, the transition is if I go in with that opener and Matt says to me, yeah, sure, go ahead. You have half a minute.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, really appreciate it. Look, before I jump into it, this is my transition. Before I jump into it, look, as the head of sales over at IBM, um, is it a fair assumption? And I'm going to switch my tone now to uncertain. Is it a fair assumption for me to make that you might care about how many opportunities your sales team is able to generate using cold calling or cold outbound strategies? So I'm
Yes.
checking to see, is this something
Okay.
that is even the topic going to be relevant to you? And the trick with the transition is that what I'm doing is I'm priming the prospect. I'm giving them a heads up about the topic of the rest of the call.
Got
Within
it.
within that first minute of the call, which is what in this experience that I had, the guy didn't do it all. I had no idea what the topic was. By the end of the 4 minutes, I realized it was an AI tool that writes personalized messaging for SDRs that basically saves time because you're not using ChatGPT. It's built into whatever tools you're already using. Cool. He could have said that to me basically in 30 seconds, not 4 minutes. The thing with the transition is it's also a great opportunity to check that you got the right person. Because some people will go okay to your opener, and 2 minutes in, you start to realize this is not the right Matt McNamara. It's a different Matt McNamara. That, by the way, will happen. I think it's about 5 to 10% of the people you connect with will have the same name, but it's the wrong number. And this is just
5 to 10. Wow.
It's a huge number of people who will
Yeah.
actually, once you connect with someone, you realize it was their name, but it wasn't them. It was somebody else. And that's why you'll hear things where people are so confused, like, what are you talking about? I'm not a head of sales. That's why I love the transition question. It does a few things. It checks to make sure this is the right Matt, and he's still at the company in that role, and he cares about this topic. That's the things I need. And on his end, I've just told him the topic of the conversation. So now we can go into the probe. For the first time, I can ask him a question about a challenge that goes right from the opener transition to the challenge, the probe.
So if he says, to your priming question, if he says or she says no, are you then pivoting to a different priming question, or what happens then?
Yeah. So if in the transition you're like, no, I'm not the head of sales at IBM, I'll be like, oh, let me just double check here. My research looks like on LinkedIn, did you leave IBM? Are you no longer the head of sales? You're in a different role? Just get curious about what they mean.
Got it,
Or did I
okay.
just call the wrong Matt? Sometimes you'll hear people say this. I heard this with my clients just this week on a live call session we did, where one of the prospects was like, yeah, I've been getting calls for this person for months. So somewhere in the databases, this poor guy is getting someone else's like phone calls because his phone number is showing up as a different prospect. That happens too, right? So the transition question right after you get permission to go into the rest of the call is a way to check for all those things in one simple question.
Okay, so but let's say they were to confirm, yes, I'm the head of sales.
Yeah.
But they're going to be a complete a-hole. I don't care about our sales team's opportunities. Like I don't care. Like
I would just go back and challenge it. Anytime someone confirms that they're actually the persona that I like to sell to, and I know some things about that person's world, I'm going to go in and challenge, and I would say, oh, that's great. So you don't care about it because your team's already crushing it. They're able to book at least 1, if not 2 meetings a day cold calling.
Got it.
And
okay.
Not in a challenging tone, but I try to take on a little bit of that uncertain tone of like, oh, that's awesome to hear. I also will congratulate people a lot or give them kudos, because the risk is that I don't want to call him an idiot or tell him he doesn't know how to run his business. So try to take the approach of like, yeah, I hear that all the time. But usually what it means is, and now I might go in to a different way to get to my probe by saying like, hey, congrats that you have that down. And when I hear this, sometimes it means you already have an in-house trainer. Your team is already doing really great. You have high quality call data. They know how to convert at least 10% of their conversations to meetings instead of the standard 1% that we see today in the market. Is all that already true?
Got it. Because you're treating that like an objection. Because it kind of is. It kind of is an objection.
Totally.
So, yeah. All right. So let's say ideally. Sorry, go ahead, Rodney.
We're in the heart of it now. Now it's time to rock and roll.
Now you're in it.
If I've gone in with my permission and transition, that's part 1. And there's only 3 parts to every call. And I call this, it's the 3PC. It's the 3-phase call. There's 3 main phases. Phase 1 is just your opener and transition. It's just like, hey, can I land this plane here? Can we just start? This is the part where early in their career, cold callers struggle a lot. It's tough to get through that opener. It's tough to get prospects' attention. But once you start doing it a little bit more and you practice it, this becomes a little bit easier. And the harder part is the second phase, which is, okay, now that I have the prospect on the phone, how do I get to the point where they care at all about what I'm talking about, if at all? And writing a good probing statement, a question about their current day challenge is the trick here. And one of the ways I really like, and I've used this model, is to ask this question around one, being curious, using simple language and direct, but without pitching. So ditch the pitch. Get away from pitching.
Okay.
Don't talk about you. This isn't about me. It's not about my company. It's not about what I do. That's the other really common mistake. People go right into a pitch. Forget that. Shift into the pain about them. And think
Mhm.
about it from your perspective. If you're watching this, what are some challenges you have every day? Let's just pick a common one. Let's say, like, I'm on my feet all day, my feet hurt. Now, if someone comes to me and goes, I have these shoes and they are the coolest shoes. They look great. They're super stylish. Do you want them? I'd be like, no, I'm good. Because they don't know anything about what I actually need. But if
Yep.
those very same shoes happen to be, orthopedic, whatever, and they're super comfortable, then I might actually want them. But the only way to know that is to ask and to get the person to talk about what's actually the problem, what's going on.
Yes.
So the approach would be, hey, I'm curious, when you're walking around all day, how do your feet feel by the end of the day? Are they like on fire and you just want to like keep them up for the next 8 hours? Or, do you feel comfortable? Whatever it is that can get to the pain and to
Yep.
get them to say, yeah, that's something I struggle with. Or alternatively, it would be like, do you ever wonder like, oh, do my shoes look good? Am I getting judged for how I'm dressing today? Or is that not a problem at all? No, style wise, I'm good. But actually, man, my feet do hurt. So getting to
Yeah.
the pain is the goal, not the pitch. And that's why we designed the probing question in a way where it's like, when it comes to this challenge, do you already have a way to solve it? And I've simplified this recently to the point where essentially what you're trying to get at is this question of, I know that there's a process that you do every day at work. And this process typically has these issues. So it'll sound like this. When it comes to cold calling, that's a process. When it comes to trying to generate new appointments, when it comes to getting pipeline, do you already have a way to get your cold callers to 10% conversation to meeting rate compared to the typical 1%? Or
Is
if I
this
want to ask
Ronan?
it,
Sorry? Is this similar to? We've talked about this. You've shared this on the channel numerous times, and then people commented their questions. When What was the phrase that you would use? Oh, this isn't a gotcha. Is that the same thing here, or
totally,
no? It's
yeah.
just completely different.
No, this is
Okay, got
exactly
it.
that.
Okay, all right, got it.
I'm trying to pick something that is going to be hard hitting enough, that gets
Yeah.
the prospect feeling the pain in the moment, calling it up, because by doing so, now I've had their attention the first part. Now in the second part, I'm trying to assess, like, do you have this challenge and how big is it? And so to
Okay.
say, like, look, this isn't a gotcha or anything, but when it comes to your cold callers, are they just dialing and wasting hours and not hundreds of thousands of dollars on data and systems and tools to not have conversations and book meetings? So that's one way to phrase it, where it's like, I'm not going to try to tell you you're an idiot here. So I'm not trying to get you or anything, but is this a
Yeah.
challenge? Another way to phrase it, also gently, but to get to the point, is to say, when it comes to the typical challenge for why cold callers fail, how are you handling, low conversion rate from conversation to meeting because of unskilled labor? Your team doesn't know what they're saying or doing on the phone. So asking it in a way where it's like, how are you handling this common challenge is one way to do it. Or to say, this isn't a gotcha, but when it comes to this pain, do you have this issue today? So there's a few different ways
So
to go about it, but the point is
yeah.
just try to get to the pain.
So one of those ways was close ended. The other was open ended.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is,
Okay.
even if you ask a closed-ended question here, what will always end up happening is the prospect will end up giving you more. But
Okay.
you want to keep it closed-ended, because if we go back to the, direct path of the script itself, what you'll notice is I have to get to that next part here. the actual provocative question. I'm over here. I'm just trying to find out, do you have this issue or not? But if I ask a good probing question, usually you'll get the prospect responding with like, yeah, we have a way to do that. You can go one layer deeper. That's awesome to hear. What are you doing today? Is it technology? Did you build something in-house? Like, tell me a little more. And then they'll give you that information, and now you know what you're up against, and you can keep going into your to your provoking question. Something about creating curiosity about a better way here. So the key is you might have a little bit of a conversation, but you haven't gotten to the part that you want to get to yet, which is finally your pitch. So finally,
Okay.
after you've gotten their attention, they know what the topic's about, you know that they have the challenge. Now it's time to create curiosity with your solution.
It's time to pitch slap them.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched those slapping competitions, but
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and the key
So
thing
this
to
is
do,
the provocative stage.
that's exactly right. I call this
All right.
the provocative question because it provokes your prospect into basically a full-blown conversation strategy. This is it. This is the part where finally we've gotten out of this like really rapid back and forth. This whole thing, by the way, could be 45 seconds to a minute and a half up until now. It goes fast. And so at this point, now you're finally at the stage where you can have a 3-5 minute long conversation with a good provocative statement where you're learning all about
Okay.
what's going on, timing, budget, competitors, process today. Now we've gone into it where we can get to the point where I'm actually going to have the conversation I wanted to have when I picked up the phone to dial this prospect. And to do a good like provoking statement, the key is to just focus on the exact same pain, but paired with your solution, but without talking about how you do it. Rather, talk about what outcome they would get. So if I'm selling cold call training to a company, the outcome they would get is each one of their cold callers will be booking at least a meeting a day from cold calls. Or another way to say it is, that's actually why I called you, Matt. I don't know if you've ever considered hiring a call expert specialist, someone who continuously makes cold calls in today's day and age, that would be able to get your team from the typical 1% conversation to meeting to at least 10%, 10xing the output of those conversations to generate more opportunities. Have you ever considered working with a specialist like that before? Now it's the first time where I go in with some sort of like open-ended question. Anything like that on your radar? That's my favorite way to end it, because now I've given them all the information they need, what we're talking about. We've identified that you have the challenge and pain, all within about like a minute and a half. And I'm giving them a little bit of a sample of what the benefit could look like if they work with me, my solution in the future. And I'm asking, is there a reason you have or have not considered that before? And this is where
you're getting a lot done in 45 seconds to a minute.
That's right. Don't forget, like, people don't have attention. They don't want to give you their attention. No. I was on a call review with my team just this week, and one of the cold callers at the end of the call, you heard the prospect want to get off.
Oh,
like,
no.
Not me. I'm the wrong guy. But I am on the executive team, so I know that we don't need this thing. Thank you so much. And he tried getting off, and the guy just went right in with, you know what? You know that like jumping down your throat moment where you just want to keep going? You just want to keep going? That's the stuff that I would say, like, no. Like, stay away from it. You got to let them go. And at some point, you can always call people back, right? If they answer the phone once, they'll probably answer it again. But so often what ends up happening is you don't even get to that point because the prospect just wants to get off. You never had their attention from the get-go. You didn't identify a pain that they have, and then you're trying to pitch. Here's the rule. Don't pitch until you know that they're with you, they care about the topic, and they might have a challenge that you solve. Then it's time to pitch. If you get those three things, go for it.
Got it. So you deliver the provocative, and now you're really in. Now you're really having a conversation.
That's right. And that could be 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 10 minutes. This is where the conversation really will start to organically flow, and you're off script at this point. Now, the goal and the key is once you've gotten to this point, don't forget to bring them back to the reason for your call. For so many folks like us in tech sales, the reason is to get them on maybe a demo, to a follow-up meeting. And so if that's the purpose, it's not a bad idea as soon as you get one or two pieces of information to go right back in with like, hey, you know what, Matt, this is actually why I was calling you. Would it be a terrible idea if instead of continuing this on a cold call out of the blue right now, we found 30 minutes where I could properly set up and prep with what you shared with me today, a super valuable demo, some information for you around these specific challenges. And worst case scenario, you'll walk away with more knowledge and some sort of benefit as a result of showing up to that call. I have my calendar open. How's Friday looking for you?
Got it.
And
Got
so
it.
this is where you want to transition to the reason for my call wasn't just to have this full conversation. That's a great outcome. If I walk away from a call, I have some good data. I know this is a good lead. An even better outcome is, and then I can shift it into, is this worth at least 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes of your time in the next week or two?
Yep.
And shifting to the close, the confident close, it's kind of like at this point, you're really just painting by number. It's a very specific dance. One of my favorite
Okay.
phrases to use, and I know you're a fan of this too, is the good old like go for no. So
Yep.
the phraseology of like, would it be insane if we found 30 minutes sometime on Friday when I'm not cold calling you? Or we could go a bit deeper into, and then state again the problem. Or we could go a bit deeper into how you can bump your cold callers from 1 to 10% conversion rates. And worst case scenario, you'll walk away from that call with my free script and
Insights. Yep.
some feedback on, what I think you could do better as far as your systems go, even if we don't end up working together. That way it's a valuable call for you no matter what. If you
No
can give
matter
your
if you buy
clients
or not.
exactly, you give them something of value, they're going to show up to that call. And that's the key to getting your show rates up, is you want to offer them something for the time, not just a demo. That could
That's
be enough.
that's an Anthony Iannarino tip. He always talked about that in
Oh,
his sales books. They
I
need to
love
get
that.
something out of that call to meet with you, regardless if they buy your product at any point in the future. They need to know that they're going to walk away with insights that are going to help them do a better job. That's what he always used to say in his sales books.
Exactly. It's a great tip. I've never heard of him, but I'm sure many people come up with the same thing through experience because what you realize is when I'm on the other end of that, why would I trade time if I don't know that I'm going to get anything valuable out of it? So
Yep.
if SDR was trying to sell me something, but they told me if I showed up to the call, I would get something, and it's something that
Yep.
I'm interested in, I'm way more likely to show up to that.
And that'll help with the show rate.
Bingo.
What,
Yeah.
Ronan, so you teach a lot of SDRs, a lot of AEs how to do this. What would you say is like the hardest part of getting this framework down? Like what's tripping most reps up?
Call reluctance is the first thing, which is a
Oh
symptom
yeah,
of
yeah.
like limiting beliefs that we have. Um, I've
Do you
got
have anything to
one of my
help with that, man? Because I even have call reluctance. Like I don't think it goes away, just how you deal with it,
I
but
have it.
hard.
I don't know if you've ever
Yeah.
heard of celebrities talk about the moment they walk on stage. Maybe it was Lady Gaga, some huge mega celebrity was like, even still, the first minute I get on stage, I'm nervous. I want to throw up every time.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you can't avoid that. However, the goal isn't to avoid it, it's to shrink the amount of time you feel it and to speed up the amount of time you get through it. And we know this from like from psychology 101, like the only way to speed up your time through difficult feelings is to go through them. Don't
Just to do
avoid
it.
it, just keep going through it. That's why there's actually a lot of wisdom in the idea of just go for it, just do it. Because by going through it, there's this realization of like, oh, that wasn't too bad. One little game I like to play with myself or I'll share with teams is like, all right, first 2 3 calls, I want to see if I can just get a no today. I'm gonna go for no. Like literally, just if I can get
Yep.
hung up on, that's a win. And I'm gonna see if I can get 3. Usually, I try to shoot for like get hung up on or get 5 no's before lunch. And when I actually go for that, I usually end up getting a meeting before lunch. So something about shifting the mindset to like it's okay, it's gonna be fine. I'm okay with me
Yeah.
as I am right now. I can be rejected, no problem. I'm still gonna be here, alive, and totally confident with myself instead of the stranger who could have the opportunity to make me feel bad. They're not going to because I know it's not about me. I just represent something to them.
Yeah.
They don't know who I am. So
Yeah, and they're forgetting about you in 2 seconds.
exactly. You can call them back the next day, and usually they won't remember. Sometimes they do, but for sure a week
Yeah.
later they won't remember.
So call reluctance is number 1
Yeah,
to
call
what you're
reluctance
saying.
is definitely like
Okay.
something that's always there. And the goal of call reluctance isn't to get to the point where it's not there, because that might not happen ever. And I don't want to promise you that it's possible, but you want to get to the point where it's down to 1 call, your first 3 calls.
Okay.
Like you want to get down to the point where it's not there for the whole time you're doing it. And the only way
Yep.
through that is to just do it more. Um,
Yep.
Try to go
It's a
from that.
rhythm game.
The other thing is cold callers who don't have any autonomy over what they're saying. They have managers or marketing teams who
Oh
are
God, man.
telling them what to say.
Oh.
And
And
I,
those managers, Ronan, we all know, we both know that manager hasn't made a cold call in 20 years.
yeah, or they think they saw a LinkedIn post and now they know exactly what to do with their company, and it just doesn't work like that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Get away from any kind of marketing sounding script.
God.
Um, One thing is I'll say is your voice betrays you. So your tone is so important. If you're nervous, you probably sound nervous. If you can listen back to calls, that's one of the best things you could do for yourself. Even though no one likes the sound of their voice, try to sit down with a friend, your manager, anyone to listen back to your calls. How did I sound? If you don't have call recording software on your dialer, just open up your phone and record yourself at
Yeah.
least some calls. Hear your own side of it. Pay attention to 3 things. How fast am I speaking? How
Mm.
loud am I speaking? And how high or low does my energy seem right now? Speed, pace, energy. Those are the 3 big things that we can control that affect our tonality, how I sound to the other person. The last thing I'll say is, and this is probably one of the bigger ones that, it's kind of, it might be out of your control in some way, but trying to dial when you have bad data, when you're using
Oh,
one phone number that's been marked as likely spam, when you all these other external issues with cold calling. Cold calling is there's this huge skill component, but you could be the most skilled cold caller if you don't have the right system to support you to get
Ronan,
conversations.
100%, man. I,
You're done.
I have a hot take I want to get your thoughts on when it comes to cold calling. So I have a couple hot takes, but the big one is I'm like, if you're not calling mobile numbers, eh, it's like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like, or unless you have like a dialer that's going to call like hundreds of numbers at the same time.
Well,
But
unless you're
you got to
watching
call
this
mobile
in,
numbers.
yeah, yeah, for sure. 100% agree with you. The thing is, if you sell in certain spaces, then I would actually encourage you to call the admin or the assistant. Like if I'm selling to dentists or dental office or, in the medical space,
Yeah.
I know that
Yep.
person is never answering the phone, the doctor, the business owner, and I know they have a
Good point.
receptionist answering the phone from 9 to 5 every day. So there are unique cases, and if you're one of those and you're watching this and you need help, like there's actually a different script that I've seen.
Okay.
I'm not joking when I say this. I've seen book 8 to 12 meetings a day. If you're selling into medical.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I'll leave you with this and then I got to run. But my buddy
Yeah.
sold a business for millions. He was doing this, right? Like he was calling medical offices, booking meetings. His average cold caller was doing 8 to 12 meetings per day, and they would resell those meetings at a premium to people selling medical devices, medical stuff. And so it's just different. You have to know how to speak to the in this case it's not a gatekeeper because the person's job is to answer the phone, to
Yeah.
schedule appointments, and to keep sellers away. So that's a whole
Gosh,
different
man.
strategy and approach for a very niche business. But if you're in that space, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and if you guys comment enough, well, maybe we'll do a video on it. But Ronan,
Yeah,
cannot thank you enough, man. People are struggling with cold calling. This is going to help them come up with the script and framework that works to book north of hopefully 20% of their conversations result in a meeting. So
absolutely.
can't thank you enough, man. Anything you want to add before we drop off?
No, grab the free script. It'll be linked below. Find me on LinkedIn as well. Hopefully linked below too. And the last thing I'll say is I have a full master class coming out soon. So keep your eyes open for it. If you get the script, I'll email you about it when it's
Yes.
out.
There we go. There we go, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and look out for his masterclass in the description of future videos.